Hello, everyone. It is me again to discuss Philip Freneau, who is widely considered to be the poet of the American Revolution. We're going to talk a little bit about his poems today. I really feel like if anybody were to see my YouTube channel, they would think that I have zero life, that I spend all my time making videos discussing early American lit. I really wish I could have some cool content, like super cool content, but here we are, for another person, I guess. So talking about Freneau, widely influential during the time period, very influenced heavily by the political sphere that was happening at the time. But also deeply, deeply influenced by the Romanticist or the Romanticism, or the Romantic movement that was kind of widespread at the time period. And so if you'll remember when we talked about the Romantic period, we talked about idealism, we talked about the influence of the mystical and the supernatural and how that played a role in the belief system, a reverence for nature, the desire to get back in touch with nature. We'd lost touch for a while, like, with all of our industrialization and everything that was happening. People were moving away from the countryside, and so really kind of getting back to the healing powers of nature, getting back to the influence of nature, and that kind of thing. And then we also had the physical and emotional passions and expressing those, and those were those characteristics of the American or the Romantic or Romanticism. So let's take a look at a couple of poems here by Freneau. The first one we're going to look at is The Wild Honeysuckle. It says, "Fair flower, that dost so comely grow, hid in this silent dull retreat, untouched thy honeyed blossoms blow, unseen thy little branches greet. No roving foot shall crush thee here, no busy hand provoke a tear." So what we have here is an address, obviously, to a honeysuckle flower. It has, 4 stanzas. The first stanza here was addressing that fair flower, which is hidden in a silent, dull retreat. It's a quiet place that it's not easy to find, and so as a result, this place is perfect. A retreat is perfect for contemplation, for meditation. It's untouched and unseen, which allow this flower to thrive. No roving foot is going to crush it, and it's not going to be torn away from its natural habitat by a busy hand. And so he's kind of remarking on this perfect place where this beautiful little flower grows, and how quiet and how perfect it is for contemplation, for meditation. It was very enamored with it. So in the second stanza, he says, "By nature's self in white arrayed, she bade thee shun the vulgar eye, and planted here the guardian shade, and sent soft waters murmuring by. Thus quietly thy summer goes, thy days declining to repose." So he continues to talk about this idyllic setting that this flower is in. It's nature arrayed in white, and out of the vulgar eye, of people and of the sun as well. It planted it in guardian shade, so it's nice and shady where it is. It's not going to be withered by the heat, by the rays of the sun. And then it gave it soft waters to that pass by, that is literally sustaining its life force. And so this is a setting that he really desires. It's off the beaten path. He can lie in peace, or lie in repose. And his days, he can pass his days quietly. So it's something that he would have valued. "Smit with those charms that must decay, I grieve to see your future doom. They died, nor were those flowers more gay, the flowers that did in Eden bloom. And pitying frost and autumn's power shall leave no vestige of this flower." So the third stanza changes a little bit. He admits that he's enamored with this flower, smit with those charms, with its charms. And he turns kind of melancholy with the thought that the flower is one day going to decay. He says, I grieve to see your future doom, in line 14. He makes the allusion there to the flowers in the Garden of Eden, which we know the Garden of Eden was supposed to be the most beautiful place that there ever was. And he says that flowers there, they're no more beautiful or no more gay than you, little flower, little honeysuckle flower. And they too were destroyed by nature, the unpitying frost, the autumn's power, those natural forces that are going to leave no vestige. It's almost like it never existed at all, is what's going to happen. And he feels very sad that that day is coming for this little plant that he's enamored with. And in the fourth stanza, he remarks, well, let's read it. For morning suns and evening dews, at first thy little being came. If nothing wants, you nothing lose. For when you die, you are the same. The space between is but an hour, the frail duration of a flower. So it's kind of like he's been talking about this flower, but now we're delving in a little bit deeper. He's kind of philosophizing here that we all came from nothing, and into nothing we will one day again return. The soul is the same in every single being, from the little flower to us as humans, and that we are only here for a very short period of time. He says the space between is but an hour. So the soul is the same in life as in death, and we came from nothing, we'll return again to nothing. So thinking about the greater idea of number one, the revolving power of nature, how it continually, the flower will die and it will go back into the earth, and again in the spring again it will come back, or a new one will come, and in that cyclical nature of nature. But also in the greater sense of how it relates to us as humans. We're only here, we're only blooming for but an hour, and we came from nothing, and we will return to nothing again in a very short period of time. All right, so the Indian Burying Ground is a very interesting poem. So it addresses the Native American rite of burying the dead in an active posture. It's called a standing posture. And it says, in spite of all the learned have said, I still my old opinion keep. The posture that we give the dead points out the soul's eternal sleep. So it's a very civilized culture concept of burying the dead in a prone position or laying down, because we consider death to be the eternal sleep. But the Indians actually would bury their dead in a sitting posture or an active posture, which kind of symbolize the fact that they believe that your soul continues to live on and influence the living, the ones that still remain behind, and you're also buried with your belongings, to suggest that life continues to go on in the afterlife, or that they remain here on earth among the living and still continue to be active. And he talks about the Indian is seated with his friends and shares again the joyous feast. So even though he's dead, he is still here amongst everyone as they are socializing and with his friends and having and experiencing joy. The crock that they called it wampum, I think, would be what he's talking about here. The imaged birds and painted bowl and venison for a journey dress bespeak the nature of the soul, activity that knows no rest. So the Indian is buried with his wampum, his pottery that is painted with all of the things that he actively did in life, or things that he valued. And then Indian warriors were also buried with their bow and their arrows, their weapons of war, can only mean that life is spent and not the old ideas gone. So it just means that your physical life has come to an end, but you will continue to live on past that. I think it's very interesting that he points out there in line 14, he says, "and arrows with a head of stone." So it's a civilized culture concept to bury people with a headstone. That signifies their life. The dash is the period of life, and so all that is put there on the headstone. And to have him play on that, the arrows with a head of stone, I think is a very interesting idea. So he says that "Thou stranger, thou shalt come this way, no fraud upon the dead commit. Observe the swelling turf and say, they do not lie, but here they sit." So the dead are continuing to live on, continuing the simple pursuits of their former lives, and pay respect to that culture. Even though it's different than our own, he is really buying into the culture difference here, that how the Native Americans chose to honor their dead. Okay, moving on to Sir Toby. Sir Toby is a sugar planter, so he's going to be a slave owner. And so I think this is a really interesting case for, he's kind of pointing out the fact that slave owners were able to, how are they able to sleep at night after all the things that they did to the people that were under their care. So he acknowledges the humanity of slaves, denounces their cruel treatment. He ponders what they had they done to merit. Let's see, what had they done to merit such a fate? In line 20, to have to toil the way that they do in the hot sun, working all day, and with snakes and scorpions and all these things, all the things that they're doing to merit this treatment, their fate that has been put upon them. So it creates the imagery of slaves toiling in the fields, producing food that they, starting in line 22, to see plenty which they must not taste, food which they cannot buy and dare not steal. Okay, under the looming shadows of the masters and their whips on whips there at the top there on page 784. So he asked Toby a question, Sir Toby a question. If you look down in, he says in line 30, starting line 36, down, he says, "Are such the fruits that spring from vast domains, as wealth thus got, Sir Toby, worth your pains? What joy, what smile can scenes of misery bring?" He wonders how Sir Toby can experience joy and continue to smile while committing these horrible acts against these people that are living in this way. And so the last one is, actually, we're going to have to stop and come back for the last two in the second part of the screencast.